Good morning, everybody. First of all, a very warm welcome. We even laid out a very beautiful sunny day for all of you, especially those coming from the north of Europe. So welcome to Malta. I welcome you together with my colleague, the Minister of Home Affairs and National Security, and also with the High Representative, Federica Mogherini, and also the representatives of the Rabat and the Khartoum process. A very warm welcome to Malta. High Representative, Excellencies, distinguished guests, it is indeed an honor to welcome you to the joint Valletta Action Plan Senior Officials Meeting, which is being held over a year since the convening of the 2015 Valletta Summit on Migration. I thank all of you and your governments for having ensured your participation at this important meeting. Your deliberations in the coming hours will continue to build on the cardinal principle of partnership between Europe and Africa that was the hallmark of the Valletta Summit. I extend a word of particular appreciation to High Representative Mogherini for her presence here today and for her long-standing commitment to shaping a substantial and humane response to the issue of migration. There have been several developments since our heads of government met in Malta in November 2015, with noteworthy accomplishments enabled by the summit. Broadly speaking, the progress made towards implementation of the joint Valletta Action Plan since its adoption at political, policy and operational levels is heartening. Very importantly, we have managed to foster a renewed political momentum that has translated into measurable results on the ground. Here, I wish to refer to the importance of the external dimension of migration and refer in particular to the partnership framework that builds on the outcome of the Valletta Summit and which led to the 5 pilot compacts with Ethiopia, Mali, Niger, Nigeria and Senegal. In light of the fact that these countries also form part of the Valletta Action Plan, cooperation with all 5 should be taken forwards through the implementation of the Action Plan as well. For instance, legal migration provides an incentive for enhanced cooperation in the field of return and readmission. I feel that more could be done in this field to strengthen initiatives concerning circular migration together with education as stated in the Valletta Action Plan itself. It is the combination of these factors and convergence in policies that can pave the way for a durable solution that does away with haphazard and reactive initiatives. Excellencies, friends, despite our shared determination to address this phenomenon, the past year has been a most tragic one insofar as the central Mediterranean migratory route is concerned, with the highest rate of deaths at sea registered since 2013, those that I call the unknown migrants. The sense of urgency that prevailed a year ago can, therefore, hardly be brushed aside. This is why I am convinced that your discussions in this format present a most timely opportunity to chart a structured way forward by taking stock of achievements, outstanding challenges, and available tools. I urge all of you to continue building on our joint vision and to contribute to fresh thinking about new and innovative ways to address this phenomenon through recommendations, proposals, and even criticism if necessary. My appeal to you is to do your utmost to help ensure that we all capitalize on this opportunity for a pragmatic, hands-on approach to take things forward. It is very much in line and in this line of thinking that is guiding Malta's vision on migration in its role as President of the Council of the European Union. This theme has been identified by the Maltese government as a central priority for this 6-month time frame. We will strive for the consolidation of a holistic policy, which also incorporates a strong development component and looks at long-term solutions. As a nation with first-hand exposure and experience to the human tragedy that in most cases accompanies crossings of the Mediterranean Sea, we will do all we can to avert further loss of lives at sea. Unfortunately, in a few weeks' time, with the onset of spring, we will once again be expecting more avoidable deaths at the central Mediterranean route. This comes with a further certainty that unscrupulous criminal gangs will be profiting from these deaths in the most callous manner. It is for this reason that Malta, in close cooperation with our European Union partners, worked towards the adoption of the Malta Declaration by the European Union heads of state and government during their informal summit in Malta just last week. This document does not hold a magic bullet to resolving all the complexities encountered on the Central Mediterranean route, primarily through Libya, but is another fundamental step in the right direction. We fully acknowledge the fact that the situation in Libya remains a complicated one when it comes to solid government. Yet, this should be no reason to remain inactive in the face of impending deaths. The agreement reached in Malta is not perfect, but it goes a long way in placing the focus on people and individuals, who should always remain at the heart of our discussions on this subject. By way of follow-up, the Maltese Presidency, in close cooperation with our European Union partners, will be presenting a concrete plan for the implementation of the targets set out in the Malta Declaration. The European Council will in turn review progress on the overall approach at its meetings in March and in June on the basis of a report from the Maltese Presidency. Excellencies, friends, aside from action on an international or regional level, national actions are also an essential element for a successful migration policy. I noted particular satisfaction that a significant number of countries which were party to the Valletta summit have recently introduced new national migration policies or migration-related legislation. These well-targeted and tailored national information or communication strategies could be effective, through which governments can reach out to their grassroots to provide would-be migrants with information about the potential risks associated with illegal migration in order to raise their awareness and hopefully dissuade them from embarking upon potentially life-threatening journeys. It is important that such initiatives address a target group, are based on credible and verified information, and also rest on local partnerships on the ground. It is also vital that these address the specificities of vulnerable groups, not least minors, children, as these are the ones most at risk to possible duress and abuse. Of course, these campaigns deliver more visible results when they are part of a broader, more coordinated series of activities that address the complex root causes of illegal migration, of smuggling, and also of human trafficking. I leave you with this thought and the hope that you will be able to address it during your discussions and possibly exchange best practices and expertise garnered on this front. Excellencies, I will conclude by underlining the relevance, both in terms of substance and in terms of timing, of the work you are about to undertake. Do not underestimate the impact that the outcomes of this meeting could have in the long run. I hope that your discussions will be enriched with a spirit of compromise for the greater good. What we are being presented with is another exceptional chance to achieve results through dialogue. And I urge all of you to look at this occasion as an opportunity for each and every one of you to improve, indeed, to save lives. We're talking about people, about human beings, and not numbers. Thank you very much. Now it is my pleasure and my honor to give the floor to the High Representative and Vice President of the Commission, Her Excellency Federica Mogherini.
Thank you. Thank you, George. First of all, let me very sincerely, not just formally, thank you personally. Being here today, it's not just the technical follow-up of a very important summit we had 1 year ago here in Valletta. It's also a political statement that the Maltese presidency, together with the European Union institutions, and I think all of us, is doing. And this links, as you just explained, with the Maltese presidency, with your not only priority, but also your approach to migration, that I think is extremely important in these times for Europe and beyond. And I'm really glad I'm here in Malta again after having been here on Friday for the Heads of State and Government Summit, and also to have today the opportunity, together with the Prime Minister, Joseph Muscat, and my friend Carmelo Abela, and also the Italian Defense Minister, to be just here in Malta on the flagship of Operation Sophia, delivering the first diplomas to the Libyan Coast Guard who were trained. I think these three elements just in a few days of the Maltese commitment to show the world, the Europeans, and also Africa, that there is a different way of managing migration, is a part of our European responsibility in these difficult times. As I said, today's meeting is not only an important step in the implementation of the action plan that we agreed here in Malta a year ago. I believe our presence here is a political statement. With this gathering, we are reaffirming that migration can only be managed effectively through cooperation and partnership. There are forces all around the world pushing for a totally different approach, an approach based on confrontation instead of cooperation, on building walls instead of building partnerships, on closures and bans rather than dialogue. This is not the European way, and I believe this is not the African way. This is not the way we share around this table. Things are very often made more difficult by the political situation, both in Europe and in Africa, because we know well that the temptation to sell easy illusions, rhetorics, looking for short-term and fragile consensus sometimes is prevailing on the need to look for real answers and real solutions. But what we need are solutions centered, as you said, George, on human beings. This means that on both sides, we need to strengthen what unites us rather than what divides us, even if sometimes this can be a difficult exercise. Let me be totally clear, so, at the very beginning. Europe does not and will not close its doors. We will continue to work with you, with our partners, all of us around this table, and I see so many, not only countries, but also organizations we partner with, to manage migration in a fair, humane, and effective way. This is the European way to deal with migration, also because, as an Italian, I think I can say it loud, we Europeans have been migrants ourselves up to a few years ago. And we should not forget that migration and refugee flows are not a European phenomenon. We said it clear last year here in Malta. You, in Africa, are hosting the vast majority of the world's refugees internally. And there are more movements within Africa itself than towards Europe from Africa. So we have to put things and keep things in the right perspective, setting examples from Africa also for the entire world. I think what we see now in Uganda. So we believe our common approach, based on partnership and cooperation, is the right one, not only because it's more just, and this to us is not irrelevant at all, because in Europe we still put people first, but also because we see it is effective. We see the first results. They are well represented in the document we are going to discuss in the next session. But, as George mentioned, we have the duty, and I believe the shared responsibility, to do much more. Because last year, 4,500 lives were lost on the central Mediterranean route. We saved many. Operation Sophia alone saved more than 33,000 people at sea, many of them children and some babies. But our common work will not have succeeded until this number of people losing their lives is greatly reduced and brought to zero. Because until every one of these children of your great continent has a safer and better alternative, we will not have done our job. George said it very well. These are not numbers. These are real stories, families, relatives, friends, who often do not even know the fate of their dearest ones. We should not prevent people from seeking a better life elsewhere, but we must stop the tragedy at sea and in the desert, and this is a shared responsibility we have. Enter a different era with a global system of well-managed mobility with a shared responsibility. This is not only a European interest and a European responsibility. It is an interest and a responsibility we all share, Europeans and Africans alike, governments, institutions, regional organizations, international organizations, NGOs, beyond nationality and beyond political ideologies. because people come first and human lives come first. 1 year ago, we all decided to take responsibility and to do our part with the action plan we agreed here in Valletta. And I am absolutely convinced that if we move forward on all the 5 pillars we decided to put in place and fully implement them, we will indeed achieve our shared goals. This meeting today is, in fact, first of all, an opportunity we have to recommit together to the 5 pillars we agreed together here in Malta 1 year ago. The investment to tackle the root causes of migration must go together with the work to stop irregular flows, both fighting smugglers and through returns, but we must also facilitate, as George mentioned, regular flows and guarantee asylum to all those who have the right to it. None of these 5 actions should and can be implemented alone, and none of them is less or more important than others. If you look at the data, more than 60% of bilateral and multilateral funds under the action plan have been invested to address the root causes of migration. This work on the long-term drivers is essential to us because we know that this is the real solution to the issue. And this, we believe, must be strengthened even further. To do so, the European Union has recently set up an external investment plan which will help us mobilize the private sector that has to come more in the picture to stimulate investments exactly where they are more needed and more difficult, which means in fragile situations. But we should not forget the immediate objectives we have set as well. Because every day, every single day, people still die on the route. Those we see at sea, those we don't see in the desert. Each one of those lives is one too many. And we can save them, protect them, prevent these dangerous journeys only if we manage together. This is why we need to make sure that our actions have also an immediate impact, in particular on smuggling. So the work on the 5 pillars has to proceed in parallel. This is the approach taken in our draft joint conclusions, and I'd like to thank in particular Mali, Ethiopia and Malta for their work to take everyone's priorities on board. These draft joint conclusions recommend broad action within each of the 5 pillars, from job creation to the promotion of regular channels for migration, from the fight against human trafficking to building a better system for human mobility. We need now to turn them into real action, as we have managed to do in this first year of joint work. Of course, in 1 year, we have not yet put in place all the measures we needed and we wanted to. But it is encouraging to me to see that our work goes on well, not only bilaterally, but also on a regional level. And let me thank all the countries in the Rabat and in the Khartoum process and the African Union for their readiness to engage. And it is a pleasure, if I can, on a personal note, to see that the chairmanship of the African Union's Commission went from a good friend of mine, as Mrs. Zuma, to another good friend of mine, such as Moussa Faki. I think we will continue to work wonderfully well together. As we discuss and negotiate, we might sometimes have the feeling that our interests diverge, and the public messages might go in different directions. But if we think of that seriously, that this really is not the case. We share an interest, we share a responsibility to better manage migration flows. We all want to stop people dying in the Mediterranean, not people, the dying in the Mediterranean. We want all to improve living conditions along the route, and Europeans know that we can help each other. Europe can help Africa also to understand some things, and Africa can help Europe also to understand some things. I'll make one example. I believe Europeans should understand that we need migration for our economies and for our welfare systems, with the demographic trend we have, to be sustainable. And Africans on their side should constantly consider the costs of human trafficking, the loss of human lives, and how dangerous also a brain drain can be for the continent. So we can help each other, facing things pragmatically in the sense of cooperation, in a sense of partnership. We have a shared interest to find cooperative solutions. 1 year ago, here in Valletta, we decided to share this challenge and to do it in full partnership, in full respect. Last September, I was proud to see that at the UN, the very same principles became the basis for the future global compacts on migration and refugees. And we're working hand in hand with the IOM, with UNHCR, to make this true. We have set an example together, us all, I believe, for the world. Migration can be managed together through partnership, cooperation and respect. Not a self-evident message in these days, but that is our joint European, African, international way, and we see this is starting to work. We now need to be ambitious in continuing to turn commitments into action, and I believe we can show the world that another way to deal with human mobility is indeed possible if we do that together. I thank you very much and wish you all a very fruitful meeting that, again, as I said, is not just a technical meeting, but it's highly political and relevant, not only for Europe, for Africa, but also for the entire international community. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you much, Federica, for sharing with us your thoughts and reflections and also showing us your determination to work for the solution of this phenomenon. Now I have the pleasure to give the floor to my colleague, the Honourable Carmelo Abela, Minister of Home Affairs and National Security.
Thank you very much, High Representative, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to you all. It is an honor for me to address the senior officials of the Valletta partners on the occasion of this meeting that has been convened to follow up on the joint action plan agreed by our heads of state and government here in Malta in November 2015. The Valletta Summit on Migration is indeed a landmark in relations on migration between the European Union and African states. The Valletta process remains the foundation of our approach to migration in Africa and will hopefully be given a fresh impetus during this two-day meeting. The core objective of this meeting will be to take stock of the progress made in the implementation of the joint Valletta action plan. However, it will also serve as an opportunity to achieve political direction on the way forward and the future priorities, so that we can continue to implement the joint action plan in line with the principles and the vision agreed at the Valletta Summit. I take this opportunity to thank the chairs and all those involved in the Rabat and Khartoum process for their work over the past months and for their efforts to provide us with a picture of public policies and programs undertaken so far. I would also like to thank all parties involved in the implementation of the joint Valletta action plan. Much progress has been made since the Valletta Summit, and I am convinced that we will continue to work steadily together to enhance our cooperation on migration matters. As the declaration on the external aspects of migration agreed upon in Malta last Friday by the members of the European Council points out, the Valletta Action Plan has, together with the partnership framework, allowed the European Union to deepen long-term cooperation with partner countries through a solid partnership based on mutual trust. Our work is already yielding results and will be intensified. Within a European Union context, Malta has consistently argued for the intensification of cooperation between our two continents. This remains a priority for Malta, be it as an EU member state or as the current presidency of the Council of the European Union. Our cooperation on migration should be as comprehensive as possible, encompassing and giving equal importance to all 5 priority domains agreed upon in the joint Valletta Action Plan. Here in Malta, the Ministry for Foreign Affairs and the Ministry for Home Affairs, which are responsible for the external and internal dimensions of migration respectively, are fully committed to see the engagement between European and African partners continue on the basis of the Valletta principles of solidarity, partnership, and shared responsibility. We need to continue addressing the root causes of irregular migration and forced displacement, to enhance cooperation on legal migration and mobility, to reinforce the protection of migrants and asylum seekers, to prevent and fight irregular migration, migrant smuggling and trafficking in human beings, and to work more closely to improve cooperation on return, readmission and reintegration. Of course, cooperation in the migration sphere should, and indeed can, be beneficial both from a European as well as an African perspective. Unfortunately, we continue facing an irregular migration scenario that is leading to the loss of thousands of lives at sea, further to being unsustainable. Tragically, the number of deaths of children, women, and men crossing the Mediterranean hit a record high in 2016, and this calls for immediate action. It is regrettable that migration between Africa and Europe is to a significant extent still being arranged by migrant smugglers' networks whose only interest lies in quick and exorbitant profits. Further to people perishing at sea, thousands of migrants are being exploited after being lured from their countries and regions of origin, often on the basis of false promises and misinformation. Italian and Maltese assets, among those of other countries, have over the past years prevented several tragedies at sea. However, it is a fact that as long as migrant smugglers are allowed to operate, lives will continue being lost. We need to be more decisive in the fight against such networks, and by we, I do mean all of us, on both the African and European sides. At the same time, we cannot stress enough the value of addressing the root causes of migration by fostering development in the several regions of origin. This should contribute towards discouraging irregular migration. However, it has to be recognized that such initiatives will not stop migration altogether. Indeed, our objective should rather be to manage the migratory process in such a way to bring about benefits to both countries of origin and countries of destination. This is certainly not easy to achieve, and our partnership was established precisely with a view to achieving such and similar objectives. You, the senior officials of the Valletta partners, have a very important role to play in the development of cooperation that would lead to the achievement of these objectives. You are our administration, managing the day-to-day running of ministries, departments, and entities that have a crucial role to play in the implementation of the joint Valletta Action Plan. You also have an important role to play in the international protection sphere, as we need to make sure that international protection processes are supported by the provision of adequate resources in as many countries as possible. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we need to prevent situations where asylum seekers have to place themselves at the mercy of migrant smugglers in order to cross large tracts of land or the Mediterranean. International protection is one of those spheres that call for more intensive and ongoing cooperation between European and African partners. At the same time, we need to strive for more resettlement opportunities, as well as the allocation of funding for the establishment and strengthening of international protection procedures, evidently in cooperation with UNHCR. Whilst the commitments in question must be undertaken at the political level, cooperation at the administrative level remains a prerequisite. Indeed, that is the reason why meetings such as today's are important and meaningful. Clearly, this does not only apply to the areas of cooperation I focused upon, but also to others such as legal migration. It should be clear that the provision of legal migration opportunities, it is important as the measures I mentioned. For our global objective can only be reached if we manage to secure progress in all the relevant policy areas. Cooperation between the European and the African partners must be as comprehensive in practice, on the ground, as it is in the framework provided by the Action Plan. Finally, if we are really committed towards our objective, we, the European and African governments, must continue to work on all the aspects of the Action Plan. This is probably the most important message. We need to maintain the momentum to make further sustainable progress. This is a long-term process which requires unwavering commitment from both sides. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I will leave you with these thoughts whilst wishing you a very fruitful meeting. Your success is our success and is central to the success of the Valletta initiative. Thank you very much.